Alright guys, now I don't really think it's a mystery to why all Resident Evil remakes for the past decade have been very successful. Well, not to mention Resident Evil 4 Remake, which is looking like it's gonna be the best one yet. The reason being is cause simply Capcom knows what it's doing with its horror games. Well, one of these games that still hasn't made a return for God knows what reason is gotta be the one and only Hunting Ground. That is perhaps, I would say, the most obscure survival horror game I personally ever played in my whole life. So I don't really know. If this was actually to happen in any way, be it a remake or a new entry, it would be something pretty different, something definitely worth the wait for, I would say, and hopefully that will be something sooner rather than later.
In the region where she went missing.
Alright, so is there an Alien Isolation 2 game in the making right now? I mean, it's been 8 years already, and the original game lived enough to make for 3 more sequels, if they wanted to. Well, Creator Assembly, the fine folks at the studio in charge of the game, are at the moment focusing on a few other games. One is technically a Predator game, something else called Hyenas, which is a multiplayer survival game, and well, until we get some lights on a new Alien game, it is probably gonna be an entire whole year. I mean, there is another Alien game in the making, but an Alien Isolation? Well, it's gotta be a while.
Are you lost?
I've actually mentioned this a few times already, but in case you didn't really catch up on the news, there's a couple of Silent Hill games in the making right now. One is a collaboration with Hideo Kojima, another one being developed by its original creator from 30 years ago. Hideo Kojima is actually pretty much reviving the cancelled Silent Hill game and working with both the PlayStation and Konami for the new game. Just take a look. There's words that an official announcement for this new game will come around in the following month. At number 4, we're just gonna have to give it to the old Siren Blood Curse, a survival horror stealth game made by a Japanese developer and also, well, published by Sony Computer itself. See, Blood Curse, though, was the third and final installment in the Siren series. It then came out in 2008 and received generally favorable reviews for its visuals, atmosphere, sound, storyline, and even gameplay. So truth be told, to this day I have no freaking clue why they just haven't continued the series, but if they did, even this very hour, it will probably be one of the most anticipated projects to look for the next few years, so we'll see.
Everything that's happening in here is because of her.
She's still a sweet little girl.
Now, as in the case of Evil Within, well, truth be told, at the moment it seems a little unlikely. I mean, I'm not saying it's not gonna happen, but until we hear about a new Evil Within game, be it a sequel or a prequel or a remake or whatever, we're gonna have to wait a whole, if not 2 years. Cause Shinji Mikami and Tango Gameworks just underwent a pretty rough development, but the good thing is that Ghostwire Tokyo actually sold really well, and there's a very good chance we see some new announcement regarding their next game sometime next year.
It's all your fault. You are a failure. Close your eyes to the truth.
You want to stop me, but you have failed. I've got to find her before he does something terrible to her.
Alright guys, now if you didn't know about this one already, well, a new Fatal Frame game could be happening very soon. And all actually because of the positive reception on Maiden of Blackwater re-release from last year. Cause Fatal Frame, if you're not new to, has always been a beloved franchise, and for that reason alone, well, not to mention the success of the last entry, there is a very good chance we hear about a new game very soon. Just go ahead and make sure to stay tuned.
But she looks sad too. You... forgive me.
Sunrise isn't for another few hours.
You shall become a pillar as well.
Water is connected to everything.
Keep it with you. Images of death that only I could see. That's how I knew where I needed to go.
Clock Tower, on the other hand, is a series of survival games that actually started life all the way back in 1995, where generally has you control a young teenager pursued by a maniac every time. Now, back in the day, the idea of being helpless and have to survive with literally no defense except running made such a huge impact in the gaming scene that Capcom actually made 3 sequels for this game. Unfortunately, however, the last game sold really poorly and received very mixed reviews, and so eventually the whole thing stopped continuing. But who knows?
Something dark and unspeakable left you deeply scarred.
The Suffering, on the other hand, a first and third person shooter, psychological horror, mix of a video game by Surreal Software and Midway. Well, first off, it did come out for the PlayStation 2 in 2005, and it was pretty much a sequel to the original Suffering, which eventually didn't really sell well and as expected, in fact, significantly less than the original game, and eventually later in 2017 the game once again ported to PC, but a sequel or a prequel for the franchise was never on the table. So this one, to me at least, is pretty much dead at the moment.
But sometimes even the strongest will is not enough to hold back the demons inside.
Now, as in the case of Obscure, now this is, though for those of you new, I would say one of the finest classic style survival horror games of its time. Unfortunately, the companies behind the game are a little unsure, I've heard, to announce development of a new game, and that is according to some Reddit, that continuing such a thing at the wrong time with no gameplay trailer could be a really bad thing. So with just that in mind, because there's nothing else, hopefully we'll get some light shed on the new game real soon, if there was one.
Who am I?
Parasite Eve, technically after the release of the third birthday game, which was a decade ago, has actually still managed to keep a small fan base that followed developers' feed ever since. Why? Because the franchise started as one of the best things in the gaming industry as a mix of role-playing game and horror. However, if we're talking about a new game, unfortunately we haven't heard nothing from Square Enix ever since the last game, only rumors that they might have a remake in the making and releasing very soon. So keep it in mind.
I've seen plenty of bad things in this city. Nothing like this, though.
A decapitated body was found earlier today at the museum.
Now, if you're a fan of this series, you've probably known that Condemned 2 was a huge improvement on the first game, so it's pretty reasonable to think, well, there will eventually be a third game. Speaking of which, well, despite the fan base, a little while ago, one of the developers came out and finally said that Condemned 3 will never happen. And the reason being is because that Condemned 2 just didn't sell enough copies, and the only thing you could have hands on at the moment and ever are the first two games that were released for $5 a piece, in case you haven't yet. Moving on.
My name is Ethan Thomas. I work for the Serial Crimes Unit. And the blood on my hands ain't never washing off.
They appear to be rambling madmen.
They said my drinking was an issue. They said I left one too many bodies and one too many alleys. But everybody in this unit knows why they really brought me back.
Send me a picture of the body.
Because the rest of these jerks are too friggin' scared of getting killed.
Drop it!
And that just ain't gonna get the job done. When a guy like me is your only hope, you got a big problem. And no one on God's green earth is gonna like the way I solve it.
Mother, do we have a response?
Negative. I have attempted contact with the Ozymandias on all frequencies. There has been no response to the calls.
Captain, it's almost in our sight.
Moving on, we have Dino Crisis, and in case you haven't heard yet, Capcom actually has a Dino Crisis inspired game in the making going by Exoprimal that is set to be a next generation exclusive and coming out next year. However, Dino Crisis 4, or a remake for that matter, there's only rumors and that it could be a while before we get to see such a thing because Capcom is pretty much focusing on Exoprimal at the moment. However, if that were to happen, we could be looking at something like this. So until then, just keep it in mind. Cold Fear, on the other hand, which is, generally speaking, one of the most underrated horror games of all time, probably. One that actually still offers a really good horror experience that anyone could enjoy, specifically if you're a fan of Resident Evil games, like me. The problem is, this game went through some extremely poor sales figures. Believe it or not, even a year later, developers actually started developing a new game, but then eventually cancelled the project for the lack of budget.
USS Ravenswood reporting arrival at rescue coordinates.
Deep beneath the decks of an abandoned ship.
You mind telling me what we're looking for?
What began as an experiment,
We were told to learn what they were and how to control them.
has become a nightmare.
But Kamsky went past that. He wanted to use them. And this is the result. It will kill us all.
Moving on is the old Deadlight from more than a decade ago. This is a zombie survival platformer, and a little bit in the same vein as the famous Dead by Daylight games, and even to this day, one that actually stands out far more than many big company games. See, Deadlight, technically speaking, doesn't have a sequel nor a prequel in the making, not even rumors. All the company has to offer as of this moment is the old game that is sitting on Steam with, finally, no bug.
Storm's been hitting us pretty hard now for 48 hours. We still have nothing to go on. One other thing. I think it rips through your clothes when it takes you over. We're all very tired. There's nothing else I can do. Just wait. R.J. McCready, helicopter pilot, U.S. Outpost North 31.
All in all, then, we get to the thing which could end up being the perfect horror game as of this moment, because so far, I believe the only reason that no one had actually made an attempt to bring this game back was probably because of the transformation animation that back then could have been a pain in the butt. But considering the advanced technology today, that would be really hard to achieve. And just in case you didn't know, we actually do have a Thing-inspired game in the making, in case you missed out, going by the name L. Take a look.
What we're dealing with isn't human. But it's taken human form.
Stay the hell away from me, I'm warning you.
Come on, Pierce. This is crazy.
Bullshit. You're infected just like the rest of them.
My men are dying out there. I've seen firsthand what this infection is capable of.
Oh, you have no idea what it could do.
Like my dad always said, if you want a job done right, you gotta do it yourself.
You're out of your league here, Blake.
Yeah, take it, bitch! Oh!